Good afternoon, one and all, and welcome to another lockdown hobby time. And if you were here yesterday, all the untold ones, maybe even tens of viewers that we had yesterday, then you'll know that these bases were nothing but wood and cork. And now look at that. They're wood and cork with some black paint on them. Truly a magical transformation indeed. So these are the bases for my Grotesques. This is the Horde base right here, and this is the base for the Grotesque Champion. Now you'll notice that the cork actually goes right up to the edge on the front and the back. That's because this guy, he is quite a beast. Look at that leg extension he's got going on. He barely actually fits on his base. Maybe you've put him on diagonally, but then there'll be debate as to which way he's facing. Suppose what you could do is cut his head off and point it straight ahead that way. But I think he just about fits there. The bit of his foot that's actually touching the ground does fit. It's just a little bit of the ankle, the heel region, knee. All that knee seems to have an unusual shape there. And there's a bit of danglage at the front of the base with his weapon poking off, but it's okay because that's just the way things roll. So they've been primed black since yesterday, as you can see. And also this base has some crystals on it as well, which of course you can see with your eyeballs. And they're going to be painted orange, but that's not the first colour that goes on them. So if you've ever been wondering how I paint my Abyssal Dwarf bases, you're about to find out. But with regards to the crystals, once they're stuck on, I then stuck a bit of sand around them, just so there weren't any gaps underneath the resin. So, all blacked and ready to go. So the first step is going to be red for the lava. So we're going to be painting red onto the wooden parts here that do not have cork on them. And then, the reason I'm doing that first actually is because some of this primed colour here, this black, isn't fully dry yet. So I'm just going to give that a little bit longer before I start dry brushing, which is pretty much the only thing I'm going to do to the cork. It's all that's necessary. So we're going to, let's see, which brush do we task? We don't need too much of a precision one here. Let's have this Citadel brush. This doesn't really have much of a point anymore, so I just use it for big tasks like this. And we've got Stu Rat in the chat. If anyone has any questions or anything they'd like me to talk about, feel free to drop that in the chat as well. Referring to the comments regularly. After I've done a bit on these bases and there's something drying, then we'll do the models as well. So let's start off with the Champion's base. Just splodge, big pile of red on there. It may take more than one coat going straight over the black with the red. See how it looks when it dries. There'll be more colours than just this red going on here. I'm going to try and get right under any cork-based crevices as much as possible. Doesn't matter if you stray up onto the cork a little bit. Lava is supposed to be quite volatile, right? This is going to be red hot indeed. Not just the content, but also bases when they're finished. You know, this is the most sizzling channel in the entire miniature wargaming world. It doesn't matter if the paint's thick stage because it's only on a flat surface. There'll be a lot more paint over the top. So it doesn't matter if it's a bit streaky right now because I can just go back in later and add another coat before the next colour goes on. So moving on to the big base now. Little areas here. Right in there. And I'm going to steal some of the paint off here. Still quite a lot on there. right in it though. Any of that on the black. Currently it's morning wherever Stu is. Okay, now this whole front area here. I decided to put 3 crystals on this base because they are easier to come by now. Crystals. Because I don't think they were actually available on the Bad Squiddo website for a while, but they are. Lots of red splodged out here. Nice and thick. The next colours we put on top of this are going to be orange and a lighter. The wood does kind of absorb paint a little bit, so the colour doesn't necessarily come out that bold. And you might want layers or to apply it thick. But Andrew in the chat, good morning, long time to see. What led you away from AOS into AOW? Well, the fact that lots of people near me wanted to play Kings of War, and a very active tournament scene part of the main thing really, just whatever I play a lot of, drag me further. I wasn't playing much Age of Sigmar, I was often having to travel just to get games of it. And it just became a bit more hassle. And then on the Andy and Rem show, we kind of fell behind the releases a little. It was coming so thick and fast that we fell behind and failed to catch up again. So it would have felt kind of fraudulent continuing to fire out content for a game that we were well behind on. Latest juicy info. Also, the Caradron Overlords killed me a bit. And pretty much lost all my hobby motivation for a few months because of those suckers. They were just sitting on my painting table staring at me accusingly. And I didn't really have much of an interest in finishing them off. I painted the first 31 models and stopped being fun suddenly. Didn't do any hobby stuff for a few months at all. Got a lot of paint on this base, so start redistributing some of that elf over here. Just to make it more a bit stronger over here. Like I said, it does kind of absorb the paint, this MD. And it doesn't matter if there are some streaks in it, because at the end, if you've seen my finished Abyssal Dwarf bases, you'll know that you don't see all of the colour when it's concerned about that. Now I'm going to wipe any excess paint off the sides though, because you don't want that kind of sticking out. I'm going to paint the edges in black again before it's finished. No concerns about that yet. There's the red done, so it's time to wash the brush. Stu is actually painting for once, apparently, an old duty air elemental used as wind direction marker for Age of Sail game. Assume that's ship based then. Sail. Heard of it. Just rubbing the end of this brush in some brush soap, slightly out of the camera. Yeah, a good old rinse. So that brush is finished with for the moment. Okay, so drying away nicely. So what shall we look at next while these are... Let's put them to one side and see what else we've got going on here. So I could do something on this bad boy. This Night Stalker Dreadfiend, converted from a pair of legs and a giant's head. I've only got contrast paints on him so far, just to see how it looked, and dark enough. Are the crevices dark enough? Should I just highlight directly from here? And I'm not really convinced that I think we want more darkness than that. So, last time we went with, it was this paint, Magos or Magos Purple. The other one we have is Volupus Pink. So we could try that one next. So let's get this out of the official Citadel paint holder, which will be, no doubt, preventing spillages all around the world right now. Raphael says, that is a nice orange. How many layers did you make? What orange is that you're talking? Okay, so let's just make sure we've got the right pink. Which one? So that's the one we used. We used the purple, and then, but somehow it's come out very pink over white. So we're going to try to apply this pink straight over the purple contrast. And not every unit needs to look exactly the same for Night Stalkers, because they are kind of weird, nightmarish abominations. So I might not have to repeat this recipe every single one. But we'll see how it looks. Let's get brush. Let's get the one we just used, actually. There we go. See how this looks when it's finished. If it's terrible, these paints are only quite thin. So I could always just paint them white. Immediately, I think I'm liking this. But you can never know for certain until you try. If this ends up looking good, then what I would do next is some precision washes into certain key areas. I'm certainly not opposed to having a bright pink. If I can avoid getting any on the hair, that would be ideal, but I'm not holding. And onto the I'm going to have to do something with the hair when I've finished, because it's obviously going to get slightly... I realise because I'm right-handed I should really have the other side. See more of what I'm... Maybe I'll consider that next time. Okay, well this is definitely darker. 2 layers on now instead of just... Pink is much brighter, obviously. But there's no way I'm just using contrast here. I'm going to do some highlights, so I'm not concerned about whether it looks finished or not, because it ain't finished. Bub. That is a disturbing conversion excellence, says Jonathan. I think you might have hurt his feelings now. He says, just wanted to know, long time sub, loved the Andy and Ram show. I understand not being able to grind the shit you monster. I also understand switching games. I love fantasy forever, but nobody here plays it versus 40k or literally any other game, and I'm still a sub because I always enjoyed your cut of your jip. So, well, that's very good to hear. And if you're a fan of the Andy and Rem show, then you should be pleased, because we actually did the other day, I don't know if you've seen it, an episode where we played Vermintide PC game. So that's something to tie people over. I'm going to be doing some more of that and Vermintide 2 at some point. And if that wasn't enough excitement in your life, we are actually going to be doing a full Andy and Rem show, old school style at some point. Discuss the future of the old world at GW now that they actually have plans to resurrect it slightly. So that'll be non-stop, red hot sizzling entertainment as well. Just when you thought the world couldn't get any crazier. Almost done. Okay, so it's looking very, very bright pink now. Hard to judge too much until it dries. This is very experimental though. And I have actually arranged a trade with somebody to get another pair of these legs, another Hillboy frog monster. And I'm going to put my other giant head on that, and Red Fiend, hideous, deformed twins. Okay, let's put that colour away, and I'm going to have to wait for that to dry to see how it looks at the end. Let's give you a bit of a close-up of his face there. Should focus in, but get him right in the... It's on him. Yeah, there you go. quite hideous. So the experimenting with him is because I didn't want to immediately start painting this thing and mess it up and then realise that I wanted to paint strip it, because this thing is just gigantic. So I'd rather do it on something small and weird first, and then on something big and weird after if I like the paint scheme. If anyone hasn't seen this, by the way, this is my converted Shadow Hulk made from the Mantic Giant. So the parts for this, it's a Mantic Giant with tentacles from a Hellboy tentacle monster. It then has the frog monster whose legs I used for the Dreadfiend, has its head tucked under his armpit there, with a tongue sticking out. It's got its hand, which also has frog monster arms coming out the side of this dragon head on it. It's got a Dead Zone plague pillar from the Plague Swarm coming out of its mouth. The other half of it is crawling into a big face on its kneecap. I've used some hands from the Night Stalker Reapers, I think they are. They have lots of spare hands. So this face gets hands. There's a couple of GW bits on here, I think. I think this is from a Chaos Spawn, this tentacle coming out the back of his leg. And let's see what else we've got. We've got some more faces on his back there. One on his shoulder, that's another giant face. A couple of bits which are taken from Orknar relics models. They just look kind of weird and disturbing, so I've just made an impression of a face from one of those and put it on the back there. Some folded arms in a kind of judging. Some other just regular Night Stalker bits on it as well, like there's a little face on his shoulder, around here. One right on his foot as well. Just of that toe monster. Is it going to focus on that? What's the optimal range? There we go. Toe monster. So the weirdest conversion I've ever done, and I didn't want to start painting that immediately and then regret the colour scheme. So testing it out on this bad boy first. So as far as switching games, I don't necessarily consider it switching games entirely, because I have armies for lots of game systems that I'm more than willing to play. It's just a question of whether people around me want to play those games. Got tons of armies for King. Got several Dead Zone factions, Red Ball teams, and that's just Mantic stuff. I've also got Age of Sigmar armies, and armies that weren't necessarily for Age of Sigmar but are suitable for it as well, like old Warhammer stuff. I've got Bolt Action army, I've got Drop Zone Commander army, I've got 3 Relics armies, got a couple of 40k armies, and else probably something I'm totally overlooking. But not only that, I've got some armies here that aren't mine but are just sitting. I was just holding on to them for something, which include a Halfling Warhammer army and an Imperial Guard Praetorians army, which I painted some of, and it's been sitting under my gaming table for a while, waiting for its owner to come back. And I'm more than happy to play all of those games that I just mentioned. Some of them I'm actively hoping to play soon, but it just depends on the availability of buy and finding the right opponents, obviously. Okay, what shall we do now? This red is drying nicely. We might not actually need another coat of red on this. We might stick one on anyway, just to make it extra vibrant. Since a lot of it's going to be obscured, we want the bits that shine through to be extra bright. Spotted a tiny little splodge of red space here. So, correct that now with black. surface prime. I'm just going to take a tiny little blob of that on a brush. Just dab it in there. And any other bits I want to do while I've got this paint on the brush. You can see if there's any little crevices in the cork that aren't fully covered. Spread it out then so it dries a bit faster. And then let's have a look at the big base. Anything on here that I want to touch up before we go in there with the dry brush in a minute? Little spots of red there, splattered. I think. So let's get that brush washed off. The brush soap. Show you what I'm doing here. I don't know if this is the best technique for washing brushes, but into the brush soap, swirling it around, and I'm sure there's a more delicate way of doing it to preserve brushes longer, but these are the brushes that I don't care too much about that I'm using, so I can be a bit more violent with them. Got Graham Rigg in the chat as well. It says we've got 4 people at the moment, so somebody who's commented isn't watching it, which I find disgraceful. Maybe people are just tuning in and out, or maybe they went to make a cup of tea and accidentally closed the video. Benefited out on that. Yeah, so making a video like this, I'm fully expecting, let's see, by the time it's finished its life cycle, I want 103 views. And I think that'll be. As people don't really seek out this kind of content. Unless I change the titles to be a bit more descriptive with exclamation marks at the end, maybe, and I could draw people in. But just a 2-hour-long me painting something and talking, it's not the most. It could be the most exciting content, but it's not the content that will draw the most people in. Something to grab them. If I put something like GW paint holder put to the test and a picture of it like half spilling paint out, and then had that as the title and this video, I'm sure it would get thousands. But we don't want to resort to that. Make sure these lids are closed, and it's to one side for now. So this guy is drying up nicely, and when he's finished, I'm liking the pink and the darkness level, but I'm not sure what I would actually use to highlight this. I only have one pink paint, and I don't think the best option here. Where is it? Got this old tentacle pink, which is too pale. I think, what I want. So I'm not sure how I'm going to proceed with this. Always go for some dry brushing. I've got plenty of purples as well. Jurat says set fire to an army again. Yeah, that's always great for viewership. Gets the clicks in there. I think when I set fire to one elf, that did quite well, and when I set fire to my entire Space Marine army, that got quite a lot of views. I think that's one of my only videos that has more dislikes than likes. I'm going to look at that now, actually. Let's have a look. I have to look at my most viewed videos to get to it. And let's see. Very high up there. Yeah, so when I set fire to an elf, it's got 12,800. It's got a 64% like ratio. And when I set fire to my Space Marine army, then that got 10,000 views and it has a 43% like ratio. So people get very angry when you tend to set fire to Space Marine. Oh well. Be interested to hear if anyone actually watches my my Andy Plays Space Hulk Deathwing live videos. I've done 2 of those so far, and I think they've got about 60 or 50 views each, which is obviously nothing in the grand scheme of YouTube. I was expecting to get maybe 12 views. Quite happy with that. Just something to keep people going during this time, and I thought if I was going to play a game that's linked to a tabletop war game anyway? Why don't I just put it online, and if few people are interested in viewing it, then it can't. Unless it drives everyone away from the channel because they're so sick of their subscription feed plugged up with that. I know I unsubscribe from channels if they post too many videos. Anyone who posts a video every day, unless it's something that I'm really interested in, just unsubscribing immediately. That. We'll see if that has any effect on my audience. I've gone way beyond the point of actively seeking numbers of subscribers. When I was doing regular Age of Sigmar content, there was a point where I was gaining 20 subscribers a day. At the moment, it's more like gaining. Every time I do a video, maybe one person subscribes from the war community, which has a ceiling on it anyway because it's not the GW game, but also someone who's been subscribed to me for a long time and thinks, you know what, this is the day. Finally realizing that this is now pretty much a Games of War channel. I'm unsubscribing, and that'll be them gone. So, what shall we look at? That paint to dry. Let's have a look at this Hellfane. That is a giant chunk of resin, and I haven't finished assembling it yet. Got 3 pieces of it somewhere. Let's see. Do I dare attempt to put these pieces on it now? Live. I don't know, because this piece goes on the front, so. Then these go on the sides. So I suppose I could attach these onto the sides with super glue now, and then find that they don't match up, and just tear them off and put them at a different angle. But it seems like there's only one way for them to go in, which is that. So do I just stick them straight on? Or do I hold them in place, make absolutely sure that all the pieces meet before sticking? They're going to be wiser, isn't it? So let's have a go. Okay, I'm not 100% sure how this is supposed to on both sides. Do you really tilt it, perhaps? Seem like you're supposed to do that. Trouble is, on this side here, it looks like it's not willing to touch. See, there's a big triangle gap there. But at that kind of angle, that's a bit closer to up. That's very tricky. Yeah, I'm still not sold on assembling that right now. I want to make sure it's absolutely perfect, so that's going to be one side again for now. Working on the grotesques first anyway. But this is a very nice big chunk. You can see where I've gone in and put loads of green stuff in it. Obviously, a big chunk of resin like this, you're going to get gaps left, right and centre. There's the buttocks. Let's have a close-up of the butt cheeks. See the green stuff crammed in there. Okay, it's getting quite hot in here actually, so I think the jacket is coming off. It's a warm day. It doesn't usually get too hot in here. Got a blind on the window. But I do have a light shining in to illuminate the painting area. For anyone who's been tuning in for the last few broadcasts, you'll notice that my finger isn't bandaged this time. That's because the wound seems to be healing sufficiently now, so I'm leaving it exposed to the elements. Still in a very annoying spot though. Whenever I bend my finger, just see it not fully healed up yet. So it's very irritating. Okay, if anyone's wondering, that was caused by this saw, which at the moment is all covered in bits of plastic, whatnot, but I have used it since the incident. This is what happened. Drawing away on the frog monster, trying to saw the head off. With this hand holding onto the table, the monster was in a vice. However, it slipped out of the vice, causing saw through finger. That was a fun experience. I think even if it had been deep enough to warrant a hospital visit, I still would have been hesitant to do that in this troubling time. But thankfully it did stop bleeding on its own, and there doesn't seem to be. The last thing you want is to end up in hospital during a pandemic for some kind of minor, accidental, self-inflicted injury. Stu Rat says, too hot, I'm supposed to get 3 inches of snow on Sunday. You personally are going to get 3 inches of snow, or your region. Grimrig has gone off to deliver a mysterious package, which may be a Kickstarter. Interesting. Yeah, whenever something turns up and you're not expecting it, it's usually a Kickstarter. You tend to be fulfilled out of nowhere. The red is almost fully dry here. I can see there's still a little bit of shine to it, so I don't want to start dry brushing black, while there's still a bit of red wetness going on. That a teensy bit longer. See, what else have I got here? I've got this Abyssal Dwarf Chariot. I've got something pulling it, but I'm not going to show you what that is because that's going to be a surprise for the future. But it's going to be a special model for a tournament that was supposed to be happening this month, which hasn't been officially cancelled yet, but I'm pretty sure it will be cancelled very soon. Probably refunds issued like all the other tournaments that I've signed up for. Or it may just be delayed, in which case issue with refund held off. James says, a large number of anthropomorphic ducks. I suspect it's the Star Hat Minis duck tag. Do they look anything like Donald Duck or Daffy Duck or Count Duckula? Or are they kind of more gritty, realistic duck soldiers? What else? This guy's almost dry as well, actually. Still don't know exactly how to proceed with him, though. Maybe just a white dry brush might be a good idea for his flesh. It's going to be this dark pink highlights on it. Work. And obviously I'm going to have to do something with his hair as well, because at the moment it's just white with the white contrast paint. So there's not much going on at all. It's just very bland indeed. It's going to be an experimental, so I'll go a bit nuts on that. Who else have we got watching right now? Still need to set up one of those bars at the bottom of the screen that tells you if someone donated to the channel, because it just encourages people to throw money at you, which is always nice. Like one of those professional YouTube channels where you can see that Billy donated $3 and he can have a little smiley face that pops up next to his name when he does so. And it makes you feel good about donating money to the channel, so you're more likely to do it again. It's all a very cynical business operation, but it has to be done if you want to make any money out of this racket. That's why people do it. Chris says the horror squig is looking better than ever. Well, it's definitely a start. I like this colour much more than the really pale pink that we had on it previously. Graham says the ducks are cartoony fantasy tropes, wizards, barbarians, and a large resin drake duck dragon. I'd be interested to see that, actually. A duck dragon. Okay, I think we can go on to the grey dry brushing beastie now. This base, and the beastie is the bigger one, obviously. This is like a mini beast. So we'll use this dry brush. Is a medium dry brush. Also got very, very large dry brush here. Size difference there. An army painted gigantic. But that is very, very tough. So I don't want it to accidentally break off bits of cork or anything when I'm... So I think I'll stick with this medium one, which I also use for miniatures. The big one I've mainly just used for massive terrain pieces. I think it is a bit too tough for miniatures. It will grind paint straight off the bone, like a piranha. They should call it that, the piranha. Okay, where's the grey? So I'm going to be using cold grey. So let's give that a good shake. See what falls out. Okay, that was a gigantic splodge. Wasn't hoping for quite that much. We're not going to need anywhere near that. But when these dropper bottles start to get a bit low paint, suddenly it all just splodges out. So let's just... I'm just wiping most of that off on a piece of newspaper. And time for the dry brushing. You can see the side of the cork that I'm using, a lot of texture in it that's being brought up quite nicely by this grey. And you can go a bit stronger on the edges as well, so they'll stand out a bit more. And for these models, this is the only colour I use for the cork army. Going down the sides. Usually when I'm dry brushing grey, I would also do white on the edges. But with this particular army, there was already enough going on the bases with the lava stalls. Models take most of your attention anyway, filling up most of the base, so I thought grey was enough. They warrant an extra highlight. It's always something to consider though. Painting is as much about knowing when to stop as it is knowing when to continue painting something. We'll reach a point of diminishing returns. You're getting less and less out of more and more. So that's done, and show you, put it next to the black. Please see on camera difference. Yeah, you can see the difference there, can't you? So we're going to go on to the big boy now. Get some more paint on here. What if it's a lot of coins people are throwing at you? Well, if people are throwing coins through the internet at me, then that's fine. Because all that can cause is financial gain rather than physical pain. But if it was in person and people were throwing coins at me, that would only be acceptable if I were a witcher. I would then have the lightning reflexes to just catch them. There's an elevated portion at the back of this base because when I was lining up the models on it, spots they're going to go in, one of them was kind of poking other people around him. So that's very rude, and in the age of social distancing, he's now going to be slightly elevated so he doesn't touch anybody else, which is safer for all concerned. I haven't seen anyone make a social distancing army as a joke yet, where they've just got 2 guys on a horde base wearing masks. First person to do it. Get a few laugh reacts, I think. Basically like currency. Chris likes the bases. Hopefully you'll like them even more when they're finished. I don't know if they'll be finished today because there's some lengthy processes involved in these, which they get to once the colours are finished. There's going to be 2 more elements to it, and they take longer to dry than this dry brushing. It's dry the instant it hits the base. Crystals, before I paint them orange, I'm going to prime them in. Well, they're already primed. I'm going to do the base coat of brown first and then orange over that. Orange over black, it will take several coats for it to have any consistency. It's likely to be a coat of brown and then 2 coats of orange, rather than 4 or 5 coats of orange straight onto them. When you're doing a large area like this, sometimes you have to turn it to a different angle to spot something you've missed. The way the light shines on it will disguise sometimes where you've been with the brush and where you haven't. So just give it a tilt now and then, so you're catching it at different angles. You'll do this automatically with a miniature you're painting because you're turning it around to paint the different sides. The base like this, it's tempting to just leave it flat. When it's a subtle effect like this, you can't always see it when the light's shining. It'd be useful if I had something else to do with this big splodge of grey paint that just came out there. It is, I think a lot of it's going to go to waste. Don't think there's anything else I've got half painted that would require any grey. Five people watching. Some people do just sit there afterwards and watch. Which surprises me. Can't be that entertaining if you're not directly interacting with it. It's just me working on stuff. Some periods of silence because there is some concentration required. Because if it's just something in the background, I think I'd probably recommend when you're watching a video like this, also having some music faint in the background. Really requires concentration. Graham's back after the internet died. So for anyone that's been watching this channel a long time, Mr. Graham Rigg has been around for ages, but there was also another Graham who used to grace every single live show that anyone did in the wargaming industry slash community. And he seems to have dropped off the face of the earth, at least on my channel. I wonder what he's at. .50% of the time when a long-term viewer disappears from commenting on my videos, it's usually because they get banned for being a terrible human being. Occasionally I'll get a message from someone pointing out to me something terrible that a member of the audience has done on social media or in their life, reported on a website, for instance. And then, yeah, that's not the kind of person we want on the channel. But the other 50% of the time, it's just people that, okay, that's maybe an exaggeration. Maybe it's more like 10 or 5% of the time they're banned. The other 90%, they just disappear and move on with their lives and watch something else. Brendan says, that's how I started watching your channel, the old chill and chats you did with Spud. I suppose they were quite similar to this. I used to have quite a lot of videos like that. A lot of my appearances on Chilling Wargamers are still up on the Chilling Wargamers channel. I don't know if there are any chill and chats on there. They were usually on someone's personal channel. So maybe on Spud's channel there's some of them still up. I think he took a bit of a break from the hobby, but he seems to be well back into it now. I saw on his Facebook page that he was working on, it looked like a Goblin Blood Bowl team. Graham says I haven't seen him either. I assume that's referring to the other Graham, Vanish. When someone vanishes, part of me always wants to start telling anecdotes about them. And the other part of me says, well, you know, probably shouldn't do that because some of them might contain personal information. So, quickly hold off. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing too sinister about the Graham that disappeared, though. Just kind of a quirky personality. Not that there aren't sinister characters in this. Okay, I think this dry brushing is almost finished now. It's taken quite a while, just making sure that it looks good from every angle. Don't want any brush strokes. Good thing about the texture on the cork, let's try and get it without light shine. but it's a nice texture that automatically picks up the dry brush. But if it's apparent that all the dry brushing was done in the same direction, it will not look natural. So you just want to go kind of randomly over it. And I'm not going to dry brush the sides. I'm just going to leave those to be black. Okay, dry brushing complete. Wash that brush off. Getting the old brush soap over here. And then the reason I put you can't actually see what I'm doing, but I'll put my hand over the water pot while rinsing the brush because I have my monitor right next to it. So I don't want any water splashing onto the monitor and marks on it. Okay, that's the dry brushing done. Next, what do we want to do? Let's apply some orange. So I'm going to pour it out onto this. This is a case for a cake or something, and you can tell how long I've been using this to just drop paint onto. Got bits of resin stuck to it permanently because they just landed in. Just going to squirt some orange in there and start applying this. I'm not going to use all of it because I'm then going to mix white into the paler version of it for the next layer. So a little bit of water there. It is quite thick at the moment. It's quite. And we're going to go kind of into the middle, not around the edge. And try and roughly follow the shape. Not here, not. And it doesn't matter really. It looks how the lines are. If it's too straight, it's not going to be that big of a deal. When it's covered up, it's going to break it up anyway. Crackle earth over. So that definitely doesn't look perfect. Some more side here. And let that dry a bit, and then add a second layer of orange on there in a minute. And quite a lot here. Not just in solid chunks, going to break it up. Okay, so that's where the orange is going to go. Just need to wait for that to dry a little bit and then add the coat. So some on grotesque chunk. We are not seeking perfection. Sorry. Okay. Just going to wait for that to dry for a couple of minutes now, before the second layer goes on. So we're not going to bother washing the brush off completely yet in the soap, because we're going to be using it again. Everyone working on at the moment out there. Only 2 likes on the video so far. Disgraceful. I don't know whether likes really does anything for the videos now. I don't really keep up with what YouTube uses to recommend. No, it's alternated, switched up between being just clicks on the video to watch time, which is capped at a certain point, I think. Videos of a certain length started picking up search results and so on. So all the big channels, I'm sure, follow all that very closely. Boundaries to make sure the video has the optimal chance of success. But I don't think I really need to be too concerned with it. Whether this video gets 90 views or 100 is going to make a big difference. So, I'll show you. I've got my cork pot here. I've just been collecting all the excess cork that I cut off when I'm making my shapes, faces. That's useful because occasionally you'll think, I really need just a tiny bit of cork to raise this guy's foot up a little bit. Or you'll take too much off and you want to stick another piece in there where there was a gap. Think, hey, let's look in my box of cork pieces. And one that's just right. Glad you didn't throw them away. You would have then had to go into your nice big piece of cork, put them off. Stew rats. Didn't dislikes used to be the same as likes for the album? Yes. I don't know if that's still the case, but any kind of engagement boosted the video. So if you just went around disliking people, other than trying to harm their mental health, you weren't really doing anything. All you were doing was really helping their engagement rating, which is the video up in the rankings. Some people do get driven nuts by having a dislike on it. So I can understand why people do it, because there are malicious people out there. And I'm sure there are some who legitimately use dislike to show which videos on someone's channel they disapprove of and don't want to see more of. But again, if that boosts them up the rankings, then you're really having the opposite effect. More people will be viewing it, so they'll probably continue to do it if you're engaging with it full. So it's a tricky one. This is quite a thin layer of orange, so it's almost dry already. Almost going there with the second coat. You'll notice I keep this orange paint upside down because it's nearly empty. And I did clean it out as well recently. Even drop bottles, you do have to apply some level of maintenance to them. Take the top off, you'll occasionally see that they do get clogged up. They don't dry up anywhere near as fast as, let's see, which era of GW paint pots are awful. These pots, this is a technical paint, so I don't expect that to dry up. But the regular colours in these pots I don't like at all anymore, so I don't use any of them. Unless I already had them, in which case I'll continue using them until they run out or dry up. But I don't buy any new GW paints in a pot like this, unless it's a technical or a shade or a contrast, because they're just thinner and they aren't going to dry up. But as far as any other colour, standard colours, I'll just use game colour. 99% of the time now. Which other brands do I use by choice? I like the Tamiya clear paints. I don't use them very often, but I like them. I've used them a lot for dreadball bases. Anytime you want to paint something that's transparent, then that can be a good choice. What other brands? I've got some random ones that came in goodie bags from conventions and whatnot. I think this is Reaper, this paint. And Army Painter, I use that for my varnish. This is a really nice anti-shine varnish that I just paint onto things with a brush. And for shiny varnish, I use GW Hard Coat. So on metal miniatures, I'll do a layer of this, and then a layer of this, shine off. So it's double protected. I know some people that don't varnish their miniatures at all, and it just drives me nuts. Okay, let's get a bit more orange out here. That's dry enough, so we can add the second layer now. Then after that, I'm going to lighten it and add the next colour. So just a second layer on the spots I've already covered. Remember, it doesn't look perfect though. Some cracked earth over it. As long as you've got decent, it should be fine. Really the brightness of the colour I'm looking for rather than the consistency of coverage. I don't get a lot of dislikes on my videos lately. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I need to be more controversial, don't I? Just giving out red hot tactical tips isn't going to get the community fired up. Complain about things. Be angry in the thumbnail. And this as well. Yeah. Anyone who's played a game against me at an event, although I'm pretty much the most laid back player possibly come against, even though I'm obviously trying to win, I won't really see any irritation from me during a game. If my dice are terrible, then if anything, I'll just find it funny, probably. It does happen from time to time. So I don't think making angry videos is really going to be my Okay, now we're going to drop some white, dead white, into the orange that I've already got over here. And then mix that in. Then we're going to do the next layer. 9 views right now. Not a huge amount of white because it is quite potent. And move this out of the way so you can actually see what I'm doing. Tiny bit of water. Just mix that up. It's very white because the white's on top, but it'll start to turn orange. Up. Should come out a nice pale orange, which is what we'll go for this. Then after I've mixed up the paint, I'm just washing off the brush just so there's no paint where it shouldn't be in the brush. Or we want to stage. So we're going to apply even smaller area now inside the orange. It gets lighter the closer you get. It might not be necessary to do a second coat of this. Let's see. Being a bit more careful with it, going inside small areas. Okay. That one. And this one. Okay, done. So we're just going to wait for those to dry now. And while those are drying, what we can do as well is apply some black to the edges where the red has run over. The next colour we're going to be using on the top is a black, basically. Cracked earth black. Which is, what's it called? Where is that? It's around here some. I think it's Mordant Earth, is it? There we go. Mordant earth. So that's going to be going on top of these when they're finished, but there's going to be varnish before that. So before we do the varnish, I want to make the edges nice and clean and black, so I can then varnish those at the same time. Then after the varnish, we put the earth effect on it. So let's get the black. I use this because it's nice and not shiny at all, so it'll blend in nicely with what's got on there. I'm going to blob this onto a little plastic bag here and it that way instead of putting it straight onto the base since we've already dry brushed it. I'm going to go around the edges with it. Okay. Shouldn't be too much necessary around the back because there's barely any lava there. Anywhere that grey has strayed onto the black edges. That. To be nice and black. Front is obviously going to be the main offender when it comes to red seepage. This is absolutely riveting. Actually, this base is so big you can barely see what I'm doing here. Get the idea. Okay, so we've stopped any red straying off to the side, and if a little bit of black has strayed onto the red, teensy bit here, but that doesn't matter because the colour we're putting over this is going to be black anyway. So that's going to sit there for a minute. Wash this brush now with the soap. Or any primer drying on it. What shall we do next? Oh, I know. Let's get this base back out again, because we can do the brown base coat on the crystals now. So let's use the plastic bag. Let's go with Misty Brown. So this is going to go on before the orange. Orange over black. So let's brush this. We're going to need a bit of a point on it because there are some crevices between the crystals that are not easy. It was the ideal camera position, right where my face is, so you can see everything I can see. Comments have dried up a bit in the last couple of minutes, guys. What's going on? Acceptable. So this is interesting that I'm doing a horde base because all my other abyssal dwarves, if you look at for example, a lesser obsidian golem, they're all based as regiments. But with the arrival of preferred model count, then I feel like I should be aiming for that with all my units now. I don't feel confident that I can fit 3 grotesques on 1 regiment. So I thought I'd better do a horde in 1 because then I could just use 5. The extra space you have. 5 would be sufficient to get the 75% quota. 6. I don't think I would have been able to fit 1 on, an extra 1, 4 that I normally use if I base them as. Normally I don't do all the stages of the base back to back like this. I'm quite a slow painter. I'll just go through all the models doing one aspect of them, then put them down and leave them for a while. But when I'm broadcasting live, I'm trying to, that's the most famous, do at least hours a day and less, them faster. Won't be long until we're actually painting the models themselves. It's obviously going to be the most visually exciting time. I may change the position of the camera when that day. You see what I'm doing. This afternoon, what have I missed? Well, you've missed quite a bit. Look where we're at with the base now. 3 different colours of the lava. Dry brushed all the rock. Grey, and now we're painting the crystals brown. Because black to orange would be a bad idea. Just a bad time all round. Take many, many coats. Whereas brown should allow the orange to go on in just 2 coats. It's usually how. Then to attach the models to the base afterwards, I'm going to pin them to it. can require a little bit of precision, because if you put them in the wrong place and then have to rip them up, you're obviously leaving holes all over the base. If you've ever seen my decimators, you'll see that that happens quite a lot, because they're quite bulky little guys, and you're expected to fit way more than I believe is physically possible onto it. They are old decimators. New ones probably fit together much nicer. I'm led to believe that Mantic do actually design their units with the intention of them all being able to be right next to it. It must be possible. Going to be working on today, Steve. Presumably some more 6mm. Or we're almost done with the brown here. Wondering what I'm holding this with. This underneath, I believe, is the plastic top from some cutting butts. There's anything that size that you can just hold in your hand that stops you having to hold the actual base. So I'm painting the sides of it at the same time. See, the kind of handle you want depends greatly on the size. I know some people in the wargaming community with just giant gorilla hands, and I don't know how they paint. On the other hand, I know some people with tiny little hands. I don't know how they roll dice, to be honest. He was finishing off some wraiths and what kind of paints are you using on miniature? Presumably there's a lack of miniatures that are very, very small. but it doesn't matter because you can't see them very tiny. Probably get away with just kind of blobbing colours on them. The washes would really be. We're pretty much done. Before the orange goes on, I will go check again that all the black areas done. I think that's pretty much. So let's just wash off this brush because I'm not going to be using brown again. Grinding that in brush soap. Very probably not recommended manner, but it's a brush I don't care about. It's just a very cheap one. Most of my painting is done with very, very cheap brushes that I just buy in sets of about. And they start off with a pretty decent point, so you can use them for detail. It just means that if you're going to stick with doing that, you'll have to replace them more often than you would a high quality detail brush. Four likes on this episode. That's more like it, folks. I think the last video I did playing Space Hulk Deathwing PC game, that might be my lowest number of likes on anything. It's only got 2. I know for a fact that Dead Gamer's going to watch it because he commented on part 1. And even if only it got 66 people viewed part 2, me struggling to finish a mission and then realising that I didn't know the game as well as I thought I did. But it's fun. Hopefully people enjoy seeing me shooting things. If they don't, too bad. I'm going to have to ask Mr. Remington when he wants to do episode 2 of Vermintide. Well, we're going to do a few levels of Vermintide and then move on to Vermintide 2, which has more nurgly goodness in it. That's doing alright. That's got 100 likes. 150 views, I should say, and 15 likes, which is a good rate for something that's not regular channel content. See, there's going to be a bit of a lack of battle reports for a while. Unless I get in some games online, which is possible. Could play a game with just the camera in the ceiling, someone at the other end telling me where to move their units. So he says mainly GW contrast, as you said, washes work well for these small models. I did do a video on painting 6mm models for the Exploding 8s, which went live last week. Look at that then. I've always wondered whether washes would actually be effective on something that tiny if the detail isn't great. But perhaps it is. Speaking of contrasts, this is where we've got up to on this guy. So, last time he was painted with the contrast purple paint, this time the contrast pink over the purple. I wasn't satisfied with the darkness. I wanted it darker. Then I'm going to highlight it next, but I haven't decided how I'm going to highlight it. It does look pretty cool though in that pink, must admit. Graham says, fighting Nurgle, don't forget to wash your hands. I like how it auto-corrected Nurgle to burgled. Nice touch. Yes, if you are going to fight the forces of Nurgle, do wash your hands regularly. Don't touch your face after you've been fighting anything Nurgly. You cut down enemy troops. I know it's the cool thing to like chop off your opponent's head and then lick the sword, but if it's Nurgle, don't go do it. It's not going to end well for you. And if you see a Nurgle soldier with an uncovered sneeze, then verbally reprimand them. Tell them to sneeze into their elbow where possible. Even in war, still apply some level of courtesy to your enemy. Just realise you can see my mouse there, and you can see that it's got orange lights on it. You can actually choose any colour of lights here, but usually I have it orange, and occasionally I'll get bored of it and switch it to blue. Keyboard is always blue. That's not quite as fancy. This mouse was actually quite expensive when I got it. It's obviously old and worn out now. You can see there's no rubber on the wheel anymore. But this was a decent gaming mouse when I got it. It actually comes apart, and there's a little drawer in there that you can put weights in it, so you can get it to the right weight for your style. But I don't use any of those. I obviously like my mouse nice and light. Just nice small movements like that. Some people like a big fat mouse that they can really get their whole hand round, and others are more like finger grippers like that. My grip is mainly with the fingers there. My wrist resting on the cushioned part of the mouse mat here. Nice insight there. Okay, are we ready to do something else with these bases yet? Almost, I think. I'm going to leave it a little bit longer before we put the varnish on, just to make sure everything's dry. But we'll be varnishing matte varnish over the lava and over the sides that are black, and then using the Mordant Earth paint in a quite thick coat all the lava. We won't get a chance to do that today because the varnish needs time to dry first. So what else do we want? Let's get the Grotesques out. So, ranking them up yesterday, this guy with the custom pose that I made for him, he's going on the front rank because I really like him. See the green stuff work that I've done on his armpit, since that's where I had to chop and leave gaps to get his arm into that position, because he's supposed to like this, with his arm facing forwards, like so. Focus, damn. You get the idea. And now, looks like this. The other one, who's going on the front rank, I'm going to put the natural pose that they are supposed to come in, which is this guy. And then the one I converted is this one, and he's going to go on the back rank. Because his arms are high, because he's going to be standing on that elevated platform, he can aim his arms over the top of other models. And you can see the green stuff work I've had to do to his armpit as well. See around. And then right in the middle, champion who takes up half the base on his own. He's got 3 legs. He's going to plop right in the middle. And if you were watching yesterday, you will have seen me lining them up on the base. You can always go back and watch that episode if you want to see earlier in the process and hear me wittering on 2 hours again. Which I'm sure you do, of course. So, with the base here, this guy is going at the front like so, which then means in order for this guy to fit, is to sit on this elevated platform with his arms poking over other people. very pokey. And the reason I can put all this lava at the front is because no feet are going to go there. And if we look at the Grotesque champion, who is actually the same model as one of the Grotesques in the box, but with some different parts. So if you look here, very efficient from Mantic. This one here is the champion model. This one is from the regiment box. So it's got a different front leg. Champion is standing on something, got a different head on him. And he's also got a different left arm. He's got this big kind of spike thing that looks a lot less natural than this one. Looks like this has been fixed onto him because he's so brutal in combat. Let's give him an even better weapon and send him out there on his own. Same basic model pose though. And what I was saying earlier, if you missed it, is this guy does take up the entire base. You put him on straight. So what you can do, you can probably put his head at a different angle because the head is separate. So you could probably, with minimal conversion work, I would suggest, get his head to be facing a different way, and then you can sit him on his base diagonally. It'll fit on a lot better, and you can have him that way. If I get another one, I'll probably do something like that. But this one is going to go on, just filling up just like that, with one of his weapons at the front. So I might, with the extra Grotesque I've left over from the unit, I could just make a second Grotesque champion and convert it so it doesn't look like this guy or the other guy. So I've got lots of spare pieces lying around from kits over the years. Probably make him another weapon to make him look different. That would be a fun project actually, and I could have two Grotesque champions, because even if I was saving up that guy to add to another unit, I would still need to buy 2 boxes of Grotesques anyway. So I would want 5 for the unit, and the box has 3 in it, so I'd be left with 4. So I would still need a second box. So it would only be worth saving him for that purpose if I was planning on having 3 or 4 Grotesque hordes, which seems a bit excessive considering I'm now working on another army at the same time, and I've already got a zillion points for Abyssal Dwarves now. I went from having barely enough to field an army, having enough to field 2 armies almost once these guys are done. Got some very expensive units in there. And I really like the look of them as well. I like the Ancient Winged Half-Breed a lot. So I'm going to try to use that whenever I can. Just a question of fitting these things into the list, because obviously I like to use Susan Bracky in there as well. I'm sure they'll get some playtime though, and the Night Stalker is going to be fun. Things I'm working on for them. First of all, this guy is the test piece, and I want to get him done first. When he's finished, I'm going to move to some butchers and my Shadow Hulk, which is obviously a hideously converted monstrosity. But this guy first. I don't want to rush in, paint everyone, and then regret the scheme. I want to get this guy looking good first. Just copy that with everything. I do like this. So with some highlights, we can be onto something successful. What colour would you guys do the hair? Leave it as white and maybe just highlight it a bit? Or would you do something else? I want to hear your thoughts on that. Okay, are we ready to varnish these yet? And start getting ready for the varnish. I'm going to start this here. So, for the varnish, we're going to get another plastic bag. By the way, before we start that, I've showed you my technique for green stuffing some details with blue stuff. And I created these hideous pustules, which I have a blue stuff mould from the back of a Relics model. Kind of. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. Just stick that onto a conversion at some point in the future when I've got leftover green stuff. It's the kind of thing. That's just going in the bits box. And it's nice and flexible. It's green stuff, obviously. So when I do want to stick it to somebody, fold it round body parts or get the idea. So looking forward to using that in the future. It's the same piece that I used on this boy to do bits behind his leg there, and also this shoulder. Very hidden. You can see where I've had to sculpt the end of a tentacle myself there, so hopefully it blends in when it's finished. See all the little details. One little detail you might have missed, which I like on this guy, is, let's see if it'll focus on this. I have to put something behind it to get on this. Let's get a box down here. There you go, look at that. It's a hand sticking out of it with an Orkling sitting on his hand, mooning us. It's lost the focus now, but I'm sure you saw it for a moment. So that might be my favourite thing on the model. And that's the only reason there's a hand sticking out of his leg, because I wanted that to be there. I needed a platform for him to stand on. Stu likes the white with the Dread Fiend's head. I do, actually. I like the look of the white. I just want to add more to it, because it's a bit boring at the moment. So, let's whip out the varnish. I think it's been just about long enough, so this should be dry on here. I'm going to varnish all the lava areas and the sides of the base as well. Now is an opportune time to do that. And oh my goodness, did I not put black on the edge of this base? For that's red. So this base can't be done, so we're going to put black on that right now, actually. Luckily, there's still some here on this plastic bag that hasn't dried up yet. So, yep. That's why it's good to have either a wet palette or just the very cheap version that I use, which is just a plastic bag. Put paint on there and it takes a little bit longer to dry up than it would if you were putting it on paper, for instance. I would like to get a real wet palette one of these days. I do end up mixing a lot of colours when I'm painting, and it's difficult to recreate the exact colour again. So it's easier to just keep it wet. Going back to it. Okay, so we're not varnishing this base right now, so I'm going to put that to one side. Stu says green wash, then highlight back up to white. That is an option. I've also got X-Wraith Flame technical paint. I'm half tempted to try that on it and then highlight from there. So just to try out the paint. That could be a fun experiment. We try that now, actually. Because I can always repaint this guy or strip him entirely of paint. If it goes horribly wrong. So I think we're going to try that. Let's put Hexwraith Flame onto his hair, which has only had the white contrast paint on it so far, which all that has really done is darken, which is fine. So, Citadel Technical Hexwraith Flame. Applying it to his hair. This is meant to paint, obviously, Hexwraith Flames and other ghostly, ethereal things. So let's put it in the Citadel paint holder because it's a very thin paint, this. There we go. Going in. I already gave it a good shake, this bottle, as you saw. I haven't watched any guides on how to use this paint, so I'm just assuming that just brushing it all over like a wash. Look. True magic of these paints isn't really realised until you dry, though. Sometimes they look better when they're wet. Sometimes they don't. So you can't really judge them at all. Tempting to get too excited and think, oh my god, this looks like the coolest thing ever while it's wet. Then it dries and you think, Other times, when it's wet, you think, oh my god, this is awful, I should just stop now. But you should persist, give it a chance, let it dry. How does it look? Just any bits here? Okay, there he is for now. So we can leave him to dry before we judge him too harshly. So lid's on here. Can't be too careful with things. So there's how he looks so far, applied. When that dries, we'll determine exactly how effective that is. Hair colour. Then do some dry brushing highlight over the top of it. See, but he does look a lot cooler now than he did earlier today, before I applied different colours to him. Much more vibrant and exciting. So I'm satisfied with that so far. Now it's time for some varnishing. I'm going to varnish the lava with matte varnish. You can use gloss varnish first, but I only use gloss varnish on lava when it's on a plastic base. Because what happens is when you use the earth crackling paint, one issue you can have is it can, as it shrinks, it can pull paint off the plastic sometimes underneath it and leave you with kind of the exposed layer underneath. So I like to put the gloss varnish and the matte varnish over that to make sure that doesn't happen. But we're on wood here, so we should be fine. So I'm just going to use the matte. Surat says, don't forget the yellowed teeth. I will not forget the yellowed teeth, don't worry. So we're going to varnish this, and then it's going to be something very exciting, because apparently I have a parcel downstairs. So I'm going to go and get that and find out if it's something wargaming related. Be very entertaining, I think. So applying the varnish, which brush do I want to use for that? Let's get a big old rusty brush. apply the varnish with that. Just doing all the lava first. Dry. Just giving out untold top-notch hobby tips for free here, aren't I? Most channels would put this kind of red hot sizzling hot tip behind a paywall. Only $5 patrons get access to this. I need merch as well. I need people to be drinking out of orange mugs and wearing orange t-shirts with my logo on. I've considered getting some dice made with my logo. Or with something written on the number 6. For example, tasty or spicy. Maybe some different words written on them. So a mix. Always on the 6 though. Never want symbols on the 1. Too confusing for everybody. I should make an Andy fun pack. A mug, a set of dice, underwear with my face on it, a pair of socks with my face on it. I think people would be all over that. Now we're going to varnish the Grotesque champion. Lava. A whole string of people doing Abyssal Dwarf armies with lava bases. I think we can trace them all back. I don't know that there's an originator of lava bases in general, but for Abyssal Dwarf in this particular style, then on the Kings of War Fanatics, seen any posts from Rusty Shackleford on there. Abyssal Dwarf army was very much the inspiration for that. All I did to differentiate my bases from his was added some cracked earth effect over the top of it. So as a result, mine look much darker. But my entire Abyssal Dwarf army colour scheme was in some way ripped off. Fine, ripping off people is okay in this hobby. Being inspired, shall we say. Okay, so we've finished with the varnish. We can't do anything else to those bases for a little while now, apart from maybe putting orange on the crystals. So I'm going to abandon you for a moment, and I'm going to go and see what that parcel is. So I'm going to thoroughly to the microphone. You can just sit there in silence and entertain yourselves for a couple of minutes. Be right back. Okay, I have returned, and look at this bad boy. So, you may think he looks familiar, that's because these are where the legs came from. Hellboy, Frog Monster. And the other parts, I used the arms on this dragon head, that's part of my big beastie here, and the head under the armpit there. So I was seeking another one of these because I have another giant head. Let me just find it. So what I'm planning to do is cut this guy in half as well and stick this giant head on him. I mean, I could just cut the head off and stick it on there, but I don't think that looks anywhere near as funny as just having a giant head on top of the legs. I think that is just hilariously creepy. So, I wonder if I can nearly cut my finger off chopping this guy up as well. So, this has come from Mr. Steve in the chat there, who has also thrown in there with it a set of dice with a Bristol Brawl written on them, which are very, very nice. A nice green with kind of black speckles or dark green speckles. And I'm going to have to give those a bit of a test run, roll them a few times and see if they come up. Let's have a go right here. 8, I'll take it, it's above average. So I'll give those a try. Dice in pairs is always the best way to go because then they can be used for nerve tests in Kings of War. So I'll put those in my dice bag in a minute and see if they work their way into my regular nerve check rotation. Because obviously the dice I've had you will have seen in videos, they do let me down from time to time. And this one, I'm going to make the incision somewhere around on the back there. Not right at the legs, because you'll see with this one, I had to actually green stuff some of the back on because I cut too much off. Because I wasn't really planning to use the legs at the time, I was just cutting it up so I could use the arms and the head for something. So, I'm going to be more careful with this one, try and get 2 distinct pieces, and try not to saw my finger off again. And I think I should be able to use the body for something as well, because it's a hideous creature. So what I'm planning to possibly use it for is looking in the Night Stalker's list and seeing if there's anything that I can make that's kind of crawling out of a pit. So it doesn't need legs, because it'll just be its body crawling up. I will look into that. There's also the possibility of using it for conversions for another big hideous monster. So that's also an option. So it's going to go, top half is going in the bits box, legs, going to have this guy's head mounted on there. There's a little preview of what it's roughly. Steve says those dice are from the Dreadball event that he ran in January. Yes, that would have been fun to attend that, but it is quite far away. And I don't know if anyone else from anywhere near the north made it down there. Okay, so into the bits box with him. And I think we're going to wrap this one up now because there's not much to do on those bases at the moment, and they're obviously way ahead of the rest of the models. So what I'm probably going to do next is make sure all these guys are ready for priming, make sure I haven't missed any mold line, then prime them, and we might actually start painting them for realsies tomorrow. That'll be an interesting process. I'm going to do 6 of them at the same time, 5 for the unit and 1 champion who's going to be separate. So that should be exciting. Very exciting. Then the bases will be finished long before they will. So the bases will just sit somewhere off to the side, along with this one, which I finished ages ago. So they should look like this when they're finished. At the moment, that's how it looks. But when it has the crackled effect on it, it's going to look like this one when it's finished. So very, very exciting times all round, I think you'll agree. Okay, I'm not sure if there's going to be any more video content tonight. If there is, It will be some kind of PC game action, if anyone's interested in tuning in for that. And I'll have to ask Mr. Remington Steele if he wants to do more Vermintide. If he doesn't, I might carry on with Deathwing. Space Hulk Deathwing. I'm sure all 50 people that clicked on it for 2 minutes and then stopped watching it will be thrilled to hear about that. And I can say, Steve, the parcel that I'm sending to you in exchange, this creature that I'm going to destroy, is currently sitting on my table. I'll be hoping to get that to the post office very soon. Okay, anyone got any comments or questions before we wrap this one up for the night? Or I'll do the next part of this lockdown hobby time tomorrow, unless something comes up. Just gonna wait and see if there are any last minute questions. Stu thinks green body, purple hair for the new one. And while that would be interesting to do a reverse of the colour scheme, I'm not sure whether that would look as good. Thinking of doing this purpley colour for nearly all my Night Stalker flesh, green or anything else, like hair or fur, flames. So we'll see about that. This is actually looking pretty dry now, so I think we're getting quite a good idea how it's going to look finished. I think with some dry brushing on top of these contrast paints, there might not be that much more that needs doing. Let's see what the people think though. Make the army look as nice as possible, obviously. Okay, time to end this video then. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description. Obviously, all the social media stuff down there, including my Facebook group where I post updates, whatever I'm working on, or any videos that are upcoming. And also various links for you to throw money at me as well. There's Patreon, which currently I think it's at about $25 a month at the moment, something like that. And anything else to touch on before I go? I don't think so. So keep your eyes peeled for more videos on this channel. There's going to be a lot more live streaming juicy, red hot, sizzling, tender, succulent, moist goodness over the next few days and possibly weeks, depending how long this lockdown lasts. And if it's successful, this video series and the other ones I'm doing, maybe they'll continue even longer into the future alongside the battle reports. It does inspire me to paint more and quicker. So we shall see. All that remains to be said, I think, is night out. Whatever you